My parents thought they could humiliate my 8-year-old twins in front of the entire family to make their precious golden grandchild look better. They made my daughter Maya stand in the corner during her own cousin's birthday party and told my son Lucas his achievements meant nothing compared to baby Sophia's first steps. But what they didn't know was that I had been secretly recording everything, building a case that would expose their favoritism to the entire extended family. When I played that recording at our next family gathering, the silence was deafening. My father's face went white, my mother started crying, and my brother James couldn't even look me in the eye. By the end of that night, I had done something that would change our family forever and finally give my children the respect they deserved. If you're enjoying this story, drop a comment about where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button to join our storytelling family for more real-life drama. I am Sarah Thompson, 33 years old, and mother to two incredible 8-year-old twins, Maya and Lucas. After my divorce from Michael 18 months ago, we moved in with my parents, Robert and Linda Williams, in their ranch-style home in Riverside, California. At first, it seemed like the perfect solution. As a pediatric physical therapist working 12-hour shifts at the Children's Rehabilitation Center, I desperately needed help with childcare, and they offered their support. My relationship with my parents had always been complicated, defined by an unspoken hierarchy that placed my younger brother James at the top. Growing up, I was the responsible daughter who followed every rule and exceeded every expectation, while James was the charming golden child who could do no wrong. Even now, at 29, he remained their pride and joy, having built a successful real estate development company that my parents never stopped bragging about. When Michael and I split after 10 years of marriage, I was devastated both emotionally and financially. We had structured our life around his income as an engineer, while I worked part-time to be available for Maya and Lucas. The divorce left me with joint custody, minimal spousal support, and the urgent need to work full-time to support my children. My parents converted their attached garage into a makeshift bedroom for the twins, complete with bunk beds and a small desk area. I took the spare room that had once been James's childhood bedroom. The arrangement seemed workable. I contributed to groceries, handled most of the cooking, and made sure Maya and Lucas respected their grandparents' space and routines. Maya and Lucas were extraordinary children, each with distinct personalities that lit up my world. Maya was my little musician, dedicated to her violin with a discipline that amazed her teachers. She would practice for an hour every day after school, her delicate fingers moving across the strings with increasing confidence. Lucas was my budding scientist, fascinated by astronomy and spending hours building intricate model rockets and reading about space exploration. His room was filled with glow-in-the-dark stars, arranged in accurate constellation patterns. Both children were honor roll students at Maple Elementary, despite the upheaval of the divorce and the adjustment to living with their grandparents. They were polite, helpful, and genuinely grateful for their grandparents' assistance. My parents seemed to enjoy having them around, helping with homework and attending school events when my work schedule conflicted. I had been saving aggressively since moving in, taking extra weekend shifts whenever possible and putting aside every spare dollar. The plan was to save enough for a security deposit and first month's rent on our own place within 18 months. The housing market in Riverside was expensive, but I was determined to give my children stability and independence again. My parents had always shown favoritism toward James, but I had learned to accept it as part of our family dynamic. He was the son who would carry on the family name, the entrepreneur who made them proud at church and neighborhood gatherings. I was the dependable daughter who would always be there when needed, appreciated but never celebrated. Then James and his wife Ashley had their baby girl, Sophia, and everything shifted dramatically. My parents' reaction to their first biological grandchild was unlike anything I had ever witnessed. They transformed the formal living room into a secondary nursery, despite the fact that James and Ashley lived in a 4-bedroom house just 15 minutes away in the upscale part of town. They purchased expensive baby equipment that would only be used during visits, top-of-the-line items that cost more than I made in a week. My mother started canceling plans to help with Maya and Lucas if James needed anything at all, no matter how trivial. "James needs extra support right now," she would explain. "New parents require more attention." The irony that I had been a single parent for over a year somehow escaped her notice entirely. At first, I tried to be understanding about my parents' excitement over baby Sophia. New babies were special, and this was their first granddaughter after having 2 grandsons. I encouraged Maya and Lucas to be patient and kind, explaining that little Sophia needed extra attention because she was so small and helpless. The favoritism started subtly, but grew more obvious with each passing week. Christmas gifts that were noticeably more expensive for Sophia than for my children. Comments about how Sophia looked exactly like James did as a baby, while Maya and Lucas had always been said to resemble their father more than our family. Small things that accumulated into a painful pattern. My mother began rearranging her schedule around James and Ashley's needs. If they wanted to bring Sophia over for an afternoon visit, any plans involving Maya and Lucas would be immediately canceled. "Your brother needs flexibility right now," she would explain. "Sophia is going through a difficult sleep regression phase." Meanwhile, when Lucas had a science fair project due, or Maya had a violin recital, those commitments were treated as optional inconveniences. We had to reschedule Lucas's volcano demonstration 3 times because my mother was too tired from babysitting Sophia the day before. Maya's spring recital was attended by my parents, but they spent the entire performance whispering about how cute Sophia would look in the tiny dress Ashley had bought for her. The double standards became impossible to ignore. When Sophia cried during family dinners, everyone cooed about her strong lungs and spirited personality. When Lucas once complained about being served vegetables he disliked, my father lectured him about gratitude and respect for 10 minutes. When Sophia threw food from her high chair, everyone laughed about her exploratory nature. When Maya accidentally spilled juice, she was scolded for being careless and made to clean it up while everyone else continued eating. I started compensating by creating special one-on-one time with my children. We would go to the park on my days off, visit the science museum that Lucas loved, or attend Maya's violin group sessions where she could play with other young musicians. I began a savings chart in my bedroom where the kids could track our progress toward getting our own place. "Just 8 more months," I would promise them. "We will have our own home by next Christmas." But as winter turned to spring, the tension in the house grew unbearable. My parents became increasingly critical of my parenting decisions, from the healthy snacks I packed for school lunches to the educational documentaries I let the kids watch. Meanwhile, James and Ashley could do no wrong with Sophia, even when they would arrive hours late for family gatherings or change plans at the last minute because the baby was fussy. I found myself walking on eggshells, trying to shield Maya and Lucas from the reality that their grandparents were treating them as second-class family members while maintaining household peace. I needed my parents' help with childcare after all. I could not afford professional daycare on top of saving for our eventual move. The breaking point came in early April when James announced that he and Ashley wanted to host Sophia's first birthday party at my parents' house. "The backyard is bigger than ours, and Mom makes better decorations," he explained during a family dinner. "It will be perfect for all the photos." My mother immediately began planning an elaborate celebration, ordering custom decorations, hiring a professional photographer, and preparing a menu that would impress James's successful friends and colleagues. The party was scheduled for a Saturday when I was supposed to work, but my mother insisted I request the day off. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime event," she said. "Sophia will only turn 1 once." What bothered me most was not the party itself, but the stark contrast to how my children's birthdays had been handled. Maya and Lucas had shared a small family dinner for their 8th birthday just 2 months earlier, with a grocery store cake and gifts that totaled less than $50 each. No professional photographer, no custom decorations, no insistence that extended family members rearrange their schedules to attend. During the party planning process, I watched my parents spend more on Sophia's first birthday than they had spent on Maya and Lucas combined over the past year. The photographer alone cost more than both children's violin lessons and astronomy camp fees. When I gently mentioned this disparity, my mother looked at me as if I was being petty. "First birthdays are special, Sarah," she said dismissively. "Besides, James and Ashley have worked so hard this year with the new business expansion. They deserve to celebrate their achievements." The implication was clear. My children and I had not worked hard, had not achieved anything worth celebrating, and did not deserve the same level of investment or attention. As I watched the elaborate preparations unfold, something hardened inside me. This was not just about a birthday party anymore. This was about my children learning that their worth was determined by their parents' success, their value measured against their cousins' arbitrary milestones. I had spent months trying to maintain peace, but peace was becoming complicity in my children's systematic devaluation. The situation escalated dramatically when James called another family meeting 2 weeks before Sophia's birthday party. He and Ashley sat at my parents' kitchen table with baby Sophia, who was wearing a designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "We have some exciting news to share," James announced, looking directly at our parents while completely ignoring me and the twins. "Ashley's been offered a promotion that requires her to travel frequently for the next few months. We're going to need more consistent help with Sophia." My mother practically beamed. "Of course, sweetie. We're here for whatever you need." "The thing is," Ashley continued, bouncing Sophia on her knee, "we were thinking it might be easier if we just moved in temporarily. Maybe for the summer, until my travel schedule calms down. It would be so much more convenient for everyone." Before I could even process what was happening, my father was nodding enthusiastically. "You'll stay here, of course. This is your home, too." I cleared my throat. "Actually, we're already pretty tight on space with the 4 of us here." I gestured to myself, the twins, and my parents. The garage conversion barely fits Maya and Lucas as it is. My mother shot me a look that could have frozen fire. "Family helps family, Sarah. It's only temporary." "But where exactly would they stay?" I pressed. "There's only one spare bedroom, and that's mine." James finally looked at me, his expression suggesting I was being unreasonably difficult. "We figured you and the kids could make do with the garage space. It's plenty big enough for the 3 of you, and Sophia needs a proper nursery with climate control and sound insulation." The casual way he dismissed my children's comfort while demanding the best for his daughter left me speechless. Maya and Lucas, who had been quietly doing homework at the kitchen counter, looked between the adults with growing confusion and hurt. "The garage gets really cold at night," Lucas said quietly, "and there's no bathroom out there." "Children adapt," my father said dismissively. "Your cousin needs a stable environment for her development." "And what about Maya and Lucas's development?" I asked, my voice carefully controlled. "They've been doing well in school. Maya has her violin practice routine. Lucas has his science projects. Moving them to an even smaller space with no privacy seems counterproductive." Ashley sighed dramatically. "Sarah, you're being very selfish about this. We're not asking for much. Just a few months of family support during a crucial time in our careers." The irony was staggering. I had been supporting myself and my children for over a year while dealing with divorce proceedings and establishing my career, but somehow that wasn't considered crucial. James getting help with childcare so his wife could advance her career was a family emergency requiring everyone to sacrifice. "Besides," James added, "it's not like the kids are paying rent or anything. We'll actually be contributing to household expenses." That was the final insult. I had been contributing to groceries, utilities, and household supplies since the day we moved in. I had been doing most of the cooking and cleaning. My children had been respectful, helpful, and grateful guests. But somehow we were freeloaders, while James and Ashley, who had never contributed a penny, were generous benefactors. The decision was made without any further input from me. James and Ashley would move in the following weekend. My father offered to help them set up Sophia's nursery in the main spare bedroom, though he had never once offered to help improve the twins' living situation in the garage. My mother immediately began clearing closet space for Ashley's clothes, while my belongings had remained in suitcases for months after our arrival. The changes were immediate and devastating. Maya and Lucas were suddenly relegated to the unheated garage space, which had a concrete floor and minimal insulation. Their bunk beds looked tiny and inadequate in the echoing space. The single window faced the neighbor's fence, blocking most natural light. Worse than the physical discomfort was the emotional message being sent. They were being literally pushed to the margins of the family, moved to the least desirable space so that baby Sophia could have luxury accommodations. Maya tried to continue her violin practice in the garage, but the acoustics were terrible, and the cold affected her finger dexterity. When she asked to practice in the house, Ashley complained that it interfered with Sophia's nap schedule. Lucas's model rockets and astronomy books had to be packed away because there wasn't enough shelf space in the garage. Within days, both children had developed colds from sleeping in the unheated space. When I mentioned this to my mother, she suggested I buy them warmer pajamas, rather than acknowledging that the living situation was unsuitable. "Children are resilient," she said, echoing my father's earlier dismissal. "They'll adjust." But I could see they weren't adjusting. They were withdrawing. Maya stopped mentioning her violin achievements. Lucas quit talking about his science fair project. They both became quiet and compliant, as if taking up any space or expressing any needs might result in further punishment. The final straw came when I overheard James and my father discussing more permanent arrangements. "Ashley's really thriving with this promotion," James was saying. "We might want to extend this arrangement through the holidays. It's working out so well for everyone." "Stay as long as you need," my father replied warmly. "Family comes first." I wondered if they remembered that I was family too, that Maya and Lucas were their grandchildren, that we had been promised temporary help while I got back on my feet. Instead, we had been demoted to unwanted house guests to make room for the golden child's family. That night, as I tucked my shivering children into their beds in the cold garage, I made a decision that would change everything. The breaking point came during Sophia's first birthday party, and it was more devastating than I could have ever imagined. The elaborate celebration my mother had planned was in full swing, with 30 guests crowded into the backyard, professional photographers capturing every moment, and a catered spread that must have cost more than I made in a month. Maya and Lucas had been excited about the party, despite everything. They had helped my mother hang decorations the night before and had picked out special gifts for their baby cousin with their allowance money. Lucas had even made a handmade card with constellation drawings, knowing that Ashley liked celestial themes for Sophia's nursery. But from the moment guests began arriving, it became clear that my children were not really welcome at this celebration. My mother had assigned them to help in the kitchen, which essentially meant keeping them out of sight while the important guests mingled. Meanwhile, Sophia was the center of attention in her custom-made birthday dress that cost more than both twins' entire wardrobes combined. The first humiliation came during the gift opening ceremony. James and Ashley had set up a professional backdrop for photos, while Sophia sat in an ornate high chair, barely understanding what was happening around her. When Lucas approached with his carefully made constellation card, Ashley barely glanced at it. "Oh, how creative," she said dismissively, setting it aside without showing it to anyone else. "Lucas, honey, could you go help your mom bring out more napkins? The adults are trying to take pictures." I watched my son's face fall as he was dismissed like a servant, while the photographer continued snapping photos of Sophia with the expensive gifts from James's business associates. Lucas had spent hours on that card, researching which constellations would be visible in April and drawing them with scientific accuracy. To Ashley, it was just childish clutter interfering with her perfect photo opportunity. The second incident was even worse. Maya had been quietly sitting at the edge of the party, watching the festivities while practicing fingering patterns on her lap, a habit she had developed to stay calm in stressful situations. One of Ashley's friends noticed and made a comment about how musical children were so special. "Maya plays violin beautifully," I said proudly, thinking this might be a chance for my daughter to feel included. "Oh, how wonderful!" the woman exclaimed. "Could she play something for us? It would be so charming to have live music at a first birthday party." Before I could respond, my mother quickly interjected, "Oh no, we couldn't possibly. Maya's not quite ready for performances yet. Besides, this is Sophia's special day. We don't want any distractions from the birthday girl." The cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow. Maya had just performed a solo at her school's spring concert 2 weeks earlier, earning a standing ovation from the audience. She was absolutely ready for performances. But my mother would rather deny her the chance to shine than risk any attention being diverted from precious Sophia. I saw tears well up in Maya's eyes before she quickly looked down at her hands. My heart broke watching my talented, sensitive daughter being dismissed so casually by her own grandmother. But the worst humiliation was yet to come. During the cake ceremony, as everyone gathered around to sing Happy Birthday to Sophia, Lucas accidentally bumped into one of the decorative balloon arrangements while trying to find a spot where he could see. A few balloons came loose and floated away, nothing that couldn't be easily fixed. My father's reaction was swift and brutal. In front of all 30 guests, he grabbed Lucas by the arm and marched him to the corner of the yard. "Stand right here and don't move," he commanded loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe you'll learn to be more careful around important celebrations." The humiliation was complete. My 8-year-old son was being punished like a toddler, forced to stand in timeout during a family party while everyone stared. The photographer actually took pictures of the scene, as if Lucas's punishment was part of the entertainment. Meanwhile, not 15 minutes later, Sophia grabbed a handful of birthday cake and smeared it all over Ashley's expensive dress and the professional backdrop. Instead of any consequences, everyone laughed delightedly about her spirited personality and natural curiosity. The photographer captured those moments too, calling them authentic and precious. The double standard was so blatant, so cruel, that several guests began looking uncomfortable. I saw my Uncle Tony shaking his head in disgust, and one of the neighbors quietly asked if Lucas was okay. But what happened next pushed me beyond my breaking point. When I started to go comfort Lucas, my mother actually blocked my path. "Let him learn his lesson," she hissed quietly. "He needs to understand that there are consequences for disrupting important events." "He's 8 years old, and he bumped into a balloon," I whispered back, trying not to cause a scene. "Sophia just destroyed half the cake setup, and everyone thought it was adorable." "That's completely different," my mother replied coldly. "Sophia is the birthday girl. Lucas should know better than to cause problems at his cousin's party." That was the moment I realized that my children would never be treated fairly in this family. No matter what they achieved, how well they behaved, or how much they contributed, they would always be secondary to James's child. They were being taught that their worth was conditional, that they deserved less consideration, less kindness, less basic respect than their cousin. I looked across the yard at Maya, sitting alone at a table while other children played together, clearly feeling excluded and unwanted. I looked at Lucas, standing in shameful timeout for the crime of being a normal child at a family gathering. And I looked at Sophia, completely oblivious to the destruction her behavior had caused, being celebrated for the exact same type of childhood accident that had gotten my son publicly humiliated. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Not with anger, but with crystal clear determination. My children deserved better than this. They deserved a family that valued them, that celebrated their achievements, that treated them with basic dignity and respect. I walked over to Lucas and took his hand. "Come on, sweetheart. We're leaving." "But I'm in time out," he whispered, confused and scared. "No, you're not," I said firmly, loud enough for my father to hear. "You did nothing wrong." As I collected Maya and headed toward the house to get our things, I could hear my mother calling after me. "Sarah, don't be ridiculous. You're overreacting to a simple disciplinary moment." But I was done with their version of discipline that only applied to my children. I was done with their version of family that made my kids feel worthless. And I was especially done with staying silent while they damaged my children's self-esteem for the entertainment of party guests. What they didn't know was that I had been recording everything on my phone, building a case that would soon expose their favoritism to the entire extended family. The real confrontation was still to come. The confrontation that would change everything came 3 days after Sophia's birthday party disaster. I had called a family meeting, telling my parents we needed to discuss some important issues about the living arrangements. What they didn't know was that I had spent those 3 days preparing for this moment in ways they could never have imagined. James and Ashley arrived with baby Sophia, clearly annoyed at being summoned for what they assumed would be another one of my dramatic complaints. My parents sat at their usual spots at the kitchen table, my mother already wearing the expression she reserved for dealing with my oversensitivity. "I'm glad we could all gather together," I began calmly, placing my phone on the table. "Because I think it's time we had an honest conversation about how this family treats its children." My father rolled his eyes. "Sarah, if this is about the birthday party, you're blowing things completely out of proportion. Lucas learned a valuable lesson about being careful around important events." "Did he?" I asked, pressing play on my phone. Let's listen to exactly what lessons my children have been learning. The first recording began playing. It was my mother's voice from 2 weeks earlier. "Maya's not quite ready for performances yet. Besides, this is Sophia's special day. We don't want any distractions from the birthday girl." The room went silent. Ashley's face began to pale as she recognized her own voice dismissing Lucas's handmade card. "Lucas, honey, could you go help your mom bring out more napkins? The adults are trying to take pictures." "Sarah, what is this?" my mother asked, her voice shaking slightly. "This is documentation," I replied calmly, advancing to the next recording. "I've been recording our family interactions for the past month, and I think everyone should hear what we've created in this household." The next clip was my father's voice during the living arrangement discussion. "Children adapt. Your cousin needs a stable environment for her development." Followed immediately by James. "It's not like the kids are paying rent or anything. We'll actually be contributing to household expenses." I watched James's face turn red as he heard his own words played back. "You recorded us without permission," he sputtered. "That's completely inappropriate." "What's inappropriate?" I continued, playing another clip. "Is this conversation from last week?" My mother's voice filled the kitchen. "Let him learn his lesson. He needs to understand that there are consequences for disrupting important events." Followed by her explanation. "Sophia is the birthday girl. Lucas should know better than to cause problems at his cousin's party." The silence in the room was deafening. I could see the realization dawning on their faces as they heard their own words, their own casual cruelty toward my children, played back without the emotional context that had allowed them to justify it in the moment. "There's more," I said quietly, playing a recording from 3 weeks earlier. It was Ashley complaining about Maya's violin practice. "Can't she do that somewhere else?" Sophia is trying to develop her sleep patterns, and that noise is very disruptive. Followed by my father's response. These children need to learn that babies require more consideration. Maya can practice when Sophia isn't here. And this gem, I continued, playing another clip from last month. It was my mother talking to James. Your children will have every advantage, honey. Sarah's kids will be fine. They're resilient, and they'll adapt to whatever situation we create. Ashley was now staring at the table, unable to make eye contact. James looked like he wanted to disappear. My parents sat in stunned silence as their own words condemned them. I have over 40 recordings, I said calmly. Conversations where you discuss moving my children to inappropriate living spaces. Moments where you dismiss their achievements while celebrating every minor milestone from Sophia. Comments about how my kids should be grateful for scraps, while James's family deserves the best of everything. My mother finally found her voice. You've taken these conversations out of context. We never meant... Context, I interrupted, playing another recording. This one was particularly damning. My father talking to Uncle Tony at the birthday party. Sarah's children need to learn their place in this family. They can't expect the same treatment as Sophia. James and Ashley are successful. They've earned special consideration. Uncle Tony's voice responded, Bob, they're all your grandchildren. Why should their treatment depend on their parents' income? My father's recorded reply, some grandchildren are more important than others. It's just reality. The devastation on my parents' faces was complete. They were hearing themselves express favoritism so blatantly that even their brother-in-law had called them out on it. How could you record us in our own home? My mother whispered, tears starting to form. How could you treat my children like second-class citizens in what you claimed was their temporary home? I countered. Every single recording shows a pattern of systematic discrimination against Maya and Lucas. You've been teaching them that their worth depends on their parents' success, that they deserve less love, less consideration, less basic respect than their cousin. James finally spoke up, his voice weak. We didn't realize it was that bad. It's not that you didn't realize, I said, pulling out printed transcripts of the recordings. It's that you didn't care. You made conscious choices to prioritize Sophia's comfort over my children's basic needs. You moved them to an unheated garage so your golden grandchild could have a proper nursery. You silenced Maya's musical talents so Sophia's naps wouldn't be disturbed. You publicly humiliated Lucas for being a normal child while celebrating Sophia for identical behavior. I stood up, gathering my phone and the transcripts. I'm not sharing these recordings to hurt you. I'm sharing them because my children deserve a family that values them. Since you seem incapable of treating them fairly, we're removing ourselves from this toxic environment. Where will you go? Ashley asked quietly, still not meeting my eyes. I've signed a lease on a townhouse in Sunset Hills, I announced. We move in this weekend. My children will finally have a home where they're treated with dignity and respect. The stunned silence was exactly what I had been hoping for. For months, they had held the power in our relationship, using my financial dependence and need for childcare as leverage to justify their mistreatment of my children. They had assumed I had no options, no agency, no ability to stand up to their favoritism. You can't afford that on your own, my father said weakly. I've been promoted to senior physical therapist, I replied, with a 20% salary increase and better hours. I can absolutely afford to provide my children with the stable, respectful home they deserve. My mother was crying now, finally understanding the full scope of what they had done. We never meant to hurt them. But you did hurt them, I said firmly. And until you can acknowledge that and commit to treating all your grandchildren equally, Maya and Lucas won't be subjected to this environment anymore. As I walked toward the door, I turned back one final time. I'll send Uncle Tony copies of all the recordings. I think the extended family should understand why we're no longer participating in gatherings where my children are treated as entertainment for your golden child's benefit. The silence that followed me out the door was the sound of their entire narrative crumbling. They could no longer pretend their favoritism was subtle or unintentional. They could no longer gaslight me into believing I was overreacting. The truth was finally exposed, and it was more damning than even I had realized. The aftermath of our departure was swift and more dramatic than I had anticipated. Within hours of our confrontation, my phone was buzzing with calls from extended family members. Uncle Tony had wasted no time sharing the recordings with key family members, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. The first call came from my Aunt Rebecca, Uncle Tony's wife, who was crying as she spoke. "Sarah, I had no idea it was this bad. Those recordings? I can't believe Bob and Linda said those things about Maya and Lucas. We always suspected favoritism, but hearing it so blatantly stated is heartbreaking." Similar calls followed throughout the evening. Cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends who had witnessed the birthday party disaster but hadn't known how to address it were now reaching out with support and offers to help. Many admitted they had been uncomfortable with the treatment they had observed, but hadn't realized the full extent of the systematic discrimination. My cousin Jennifer, who had always been close to our family, was particularly upset. I saw Lucas standing in that corner at the party and felt sick about it, but I didn't want to cause a scene. Now I realize I should have said something. "Those recordings show this has been going on for months. I'm so sorry we didn't intervene sooner." Meanwhile, my parents' house had become ground zero for a family crisis. According to Uncle Tony, who visited them the next day, my mother had barely stopped crying since hearing the recordings played back. My father was defensive and angry, insisting the recordings had been taken out of context, but even he couldn't explain away his own words about some grandchildren being more important than others. James and Ashley had initially tried to distance themselves from the situation, claiming they had no idea how badly Maya and Lucas were being treated. However, the recordings clearly showed their active participation in the discrimination. Ashley's dismissive treatment of Lucas's handmade card and her complaints about Maya's violin practice were captured in her own voice. The most telling moment came when Uncle Tony confronted James directly. According to my aunt, James had tried to justify the living arrangements by saying, "We needed more space for Sophia's development. Sarah's kids are older and more adaptable." Uncle Tony's response was devastating. "James, you displaced two 8-year-olds from their bedroom to an unheated garage so your baby could have a climate-controlled nursery in a house she doesn't even live in. How do you justify that to yourself?" James apparently had no answer. The townhouse in Sunset Hills was everything I had hoped for and more. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small backyard perfect for Lucas's telescope, and a quiet nook where Maya could practice violin without disturbing anyone. The neighborhood was family-friendly, with children riding bikes on safe streets and parents who actually seemed to enjoy spending time with their kids. Maya and Lucas adapted to our new home with remarkable speed. For the first time in months, I heard Maya practicing violin with enthusiasm, working on a challenging piece for her upcoming audition for the youth orchestra. Lucas had set up his telescope in the backyard and was already making friends with a neighbor boy who shared his interest in astronomy. Most importantly, both children seemed lighter, more confident, more willing to express their opinions and needs. The constant tension of walking on eggshells, of monitoring their behavior to avoid triggering adult disapproval, had finally lifted. My promotion at the Children's Rehabilitation Center came with not only better pay, but also more regular hours. No more overnight shifts, no more scrambling for last-minute childcare coverage. I was home for dinner most nights, available for homework help, and able to attend Maya's violin lessons and Lucas's science club meetings. The contrast between our new life and the oppressive atmosphere at my parents' house was stark. Here, Maya's achievements were celebrated with genuine pride. When she was selected for the youth orchestra, we had a special dinner to honor her accomplishment. Lucas's science fair project about lunar phases earned a place of honor on our refrigerator, not hidden away to make room for someone else's schedule. 3 weeks after our departure, my mother called, her voice tentative and small. "Sarah, I've been listening to those recordings over and over. I can't believe some of the things I said. The way we treated Maya and Lucas was inexcusable. It was the first genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing I had heard from either parent." "I'm glad you're starting to see that, Mom," I replied carefully. It was heartbreaking to watch my children absorb those messages about their worth. Could we maybe arrange a visit? I'd like to apologize to Maya and Lucas directly, and I want to see how you're all doing in your new home." I considered her request carefully. I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but it has to be on different terms. Maya and Lucas won't be subjected to comparisons with Sophia or treated as less important because of their parents' circumstances. "I understand," she said quietly. "I've learned some very painful lessons about how my favoritism affected everyone." James and Ashley moved out, by the way. Ashley said she was uncomfortable with the family dynamics and needed some distance to process everything. The irony wasn't lost on me. The Golden Child's family had abandoned my parents when the spotlight of scrutiny became uncomfortable, while I was offering a path toward reconciliation despite the damage they had caused. "We can start with Sunday afternoon visits," I offered, "but the first sign of differential treatment, and we're done. My children's emotional well-being is my top priority." As I hung up the phone, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: sadness for the time we had lost, anger at the damage that had been done, but also hope that perhaps our family could heal if my parents were truly committed to change. Maya looked up from her music stand where she was practicing. "Was that Grandma?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart. She wants to visit us here and apologize for how she treated you and Lucas." Maya considered this thoughtfully. "Will she still think Sophia is more important than us?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But if she does, we won't pretend it's okay anymore. You and Lucas deserve to be treated with the same love and respect as any other grandchild." Maya nodded and returned to her violin, playing with a confidence and joy that had been missing for months. That sound, more than anything else, confirmed that we had made the right choice. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your children is remove them from toxic situations, even when those situations involve family. Sometimes protecting your children means standing up to people you love, even when it's painful and complicated. Our new life wasn't perfect, but it was honest, respectful, and filled with the kind of unconditional love that every child deserves. Just our home. It was our sanctuary, filled with the sounds of Maya's violin, Lucas's excited explanations of astronomical phenomena, and most importantly, genuine laughter. Maya had not only been accepted into the youth orchestra, but had earned the position of second-chair violin in her age group. Her confidence had blossomed along with her musical abilities. She practiced daily with enthusiasm, no longer worried about disturbing anyone or being told her music was less important than a baby's nap schedule. When I attended her first concert with the youth orchestra, tears streamed down my face as I watched my daughter perform a challenging piece with poise and skill that amazed even her instructor. Lucas had found his tribe at the local astronomy club, where his knowledge and passion were celebrated rather than dismissed. His science fair project on lunar crater formation had won first place at the district level and would be advancing to state competition. The neighbor boy, Marcus, had become his best friend and frequent stargazing companion. Their excited chatter about telescope specifications and constellation myths filled our backyard most clear evenings. My career had continued to flourish as well. The promotion to senior physical therapist came with increased responsibilities that challenged me professionally and personally. I was now leading a team developing new therapeutic protocols for children with mobility challenges, work that felt deeply meaningful and utilized all my skills. The regular hours meant I was present for homework help, dinner conversations, and bedtime stories. Simple daily rituals that had been impossible during our chaotic period at my parents' house. The relationship with my parents had evolved slowly and carefully. Those initial Sunday afternoon visits had been stilted and awkward, with my mother clearly walking on eggshells and my father struggling to acknowledge his role in what had happened. But gradually, genuine change began to emerge. The breakthrough came during Maya's youth orchestra concert. I had reluctantly invited my parents, warning them that this was Maya's moment to shine, and any comparisons to Sophia or dismissive comments would end our reconciliation immediately. What I witnessed that evening surprised me. My mother sat transfixed during Maya's performance, tears flowing as she truly listened to her granddaughter's talent for perhaps the first time. After the concert, she approached Maya with genuine pride and specific compliments about her technique and stage presence. "Maya, that piece you played as the featured soloist was absolutely breathtaking. Your bow control during the rapid passages was remarkable. How long have you been working on that piece?" The contrast to her previous dismissive attitude was stark and meaningful. Maya beamed under her grandmother's focused attention and detailed appreciation of her musical accomplishments. My father's transformation was slower, but equally significant. During one of Lucas's backyard telescope demonstrations, he found himself genuinely engaged with his grandson's expertise. "Lucas, explain to me again how you calculate the distance to that star cluster," he asked, pulling up a chair to get a better view through the telescope. For the first time in memory, my father was learning from one of my children rather than lecturing them. The respect in his voice was unmistakable as Lucas patiently explained stellar parallax and light-year measurements. The most significant change occurred during a family dinner at our house 3 months after our first tentative visits. James and Ashley had requested to join us, claiming they wanted to rebuild relationships with the extended family. The evening started awkwardly, with James clearly uncomfortable facing the children he had helped displace. But when Maya mentioned her upcoming audition for a regional youth symphony, something unexpected happened. Ashley, who had previously dismissed Maya's musical abilities as childish noise, asked thoughtful questions about the audition process and requirements. "Maya, what piece are you performing for the audition?" Ashley inquired. "Is it something you chose, or something assigned by the orchestra director?" The conversation that followed was the first time Ashley had engaged with my children as individuals with their own interests and achievements rather than obstacles to her daughter's comfort. James made his own attempts at connection, though more clumsily. "Lucas, I heard you won some kind of science award." That's really impressive, buddy." The awkwardness was palpable, but the effort was genuine. James was clearly struggling to see my children as people worthy of attention and respect, rather than inconvenient fixtures in the family landscape. The real test came when Sophia, now walking and more interactive, knocked over Lucas's carefully arranged model solar system during the dinner. In the past, such an incident would have been laughed off as cute curiosity, while any similar accident by my children would have resulted in lectures about responsibility. Instead, Ashley immediately moved to help Lucas reassemble his model. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Sophia doesn't understand how much work you put into this. Can we help you fix it?" James actually got down on the floor to help find scattered planets, treating Lucas's project with the same care he would have shown Sophia's belongings. The symbolic importance of that moment, the golden child's parents literally helping to repair damage done to my son's work, wasn't lost on anyone in the room. My mother watched these interactions with visible emotion. Later, as she helped with dishes, she said quietly, "I've been thinking about those recordings you played us." Hearing myself dismiss Maya's music and Lucas's interests, I sounded like such a cruel person. I don't know how I became someone who would treat children that way. People can change, Mom, I replied carefully. What matters is recognizing the damage and committing to doing better. I've been seeing a counselor, she admitted, about favoritism and family dynamics. She's helped me understand how my own childhood experiences shaped the way I treated you and Stephen differently, and how that pattern continued with the grandchildren. The admission surprised me. My proud, stubborn mother was actually seeking professional help to address her behavior, something I had never expected. The counselor says that favoritism often comes from our own unresolved issues about worth and achievement, she continued. I think I saw Stephen's success as validation of my parenting, and when James achieved similar success, I transferred those feelings to Sophia. But that's no excuse for treating Maya and Lucas as less valuable. Our conversation was interrupted by laughter from the living room, where Lucas was showing his grandfather how to use a star chart app on his tablet. My father, who had always been skeptical of technology, was genuinely engaged with his grandson's expertise. The boy knows more about astronomy than I knew existed, he said later with obvious pride. I had no idea 8-year-olds could understand such complex concepts. As the evening wound down and my parents prepared to leave, my mother knelt down to Maya and Lucas's eye level, something she had rarely done in the past. I want you both to know that Grandma and Grandpa are very proud of you, she said seriously. Maya, your musical talent is extraordinary, and I'm sorry I didn't appreciate it properly before. Lucas, your scientific mind amazes me, and I should have been celebrating your achievements all along. The children accepted her words with the resilience and grace that continually amazed me. They were willing to rebuild relationships with their grandparents, but they now had the confidence that came from knowing their worth wasn't dependent on adult approval. As I tucked them into bed that night, Maya said, Mom, I think Grandma really means it this time. She asked me about my music the same way she asks about Sophia's walking. And Grandpa actually listened when I explained about red giant stars, Lucas added. He didn't just pretend to pay attention. The healing wasn't complete. Trust rebuilds slowly after being broken so thoroughly. But we had achieved something I had thought impossible 6 months earlier. A family dynamic based on mutual respect, rather than arbitrary favoritism. Standing in my own kitchen, in my own home, watching my children thrive in an environment where they were valued and celebrated, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. We had not just survived our family crisis, we had used it as an opportunity to create something better. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept unacceptable treatment. Sometimes protecting your children means being willing to walk away from family members who can't treat them with basic dignity. And sometimes, when you stand firm in your boundaries, you create the space for genuine change and healing. The recordings had served their purpose, not as weapons to destroy relationships, but as mirrors to force acknowledgement of harmful patterns. The silence they had created wasn't just shock. It was the quiet space necessary for reflection, growth, and ultimately, transformation. My children were learning that their worth was inherent, not conditional. They were experiencing what it meant to be truly valued and respected, and perhaps most importantly, they were seeing that adults could change, that family members could grow, and that love without respect wasn't really love at all. Our story wasn't just about leaving a toxic situation. It was about having the courage to demand better and the wisdom to create space for healing when others were ready to join us in building something healthier. As Maya's violin music drifted from her bedroom and Lucas's excited voice discussed tomorrow's planned stargazing session with Marcus, I knew we had found our way home. Not just to a physical space, but to a way of being family that honored each person's inherent worth and celebrated their unique gifts. The Golden Child narrative had finally been revealed for what it was: a destructive fiction that diminished everyone it touched. In its place, we had built something much more valuable: a family where every child could truly shine. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your family's well-being? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more real-life stories of overcoming family challenges. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pack your bags and create the life you and your children deserve. Thank you for listening, and may you always find the courage to stand up for what is right, especially when it is difficult.